As I've mentioned before, I love Christmas. I would kill a man to have one more day of Christmas. I mean, I would murder somebody. So in the spirit of Christmas, let's talk about its origins. Before we get into it, I wanted to define paganism. The word paganism was used in the 4th century by Christians to refer to polytheistic people. I intend to make an entire video on this at some point, but at the time it was kind of derogatory, and using it implied the person was inferior. I'm sure you guys knew this, but for those of you who didn't, we named the planets mostly after Roman gods. So there was Jupiter, Neptune, Mars, Apollo, Vulcan, yes Vulcan, Mercury, and so on. Those were common gods of that time, much like the Greek gods Zeus, Poseidon, Ares, Artemis, and others. Anybody who believed in those gods was considered a pagan. And interestingly enough, the word heathen also has its roots in that time period. It comes from the Old English word heyowen, or something, meaning not Christian or Jewish. And of course, Islam branched off from Judaism too, so it's included in that list now. Anybody who isn't Christian, Jewish, or Muslim is a heathen. And obviously, that one is also used in a derogatory way. But that's fine, I'll accept the title with pride. Anyways, I want to talk about some of the interesting traditions and where they came from. First, let's talk about the Christmas tree. It's kind of an odd tradition, isn't it? Cut down a tree, drag it into your house, stand it up, and put lights and reflective plastic all over it. Then put presents under it so kids can tear them open like jackals devouring an antelope come Christmas morning. Not only that, but it's a very specific kind of tree. Can't be just any tree. It has to be an evergreen, like a spruce, a pine, or a fir tree. So it turns out that there was a superstition in some areas of the world centuries ago. I know, big surprise. But this superstition was that hanging evergreen boughs over your door or window would keep away witches, ghosts, spirits, and sickness. Germany supposedly started the whole Christmas tree thing in the 16th century or so, when Christians would put up decorated trees in their house. And Martin Luther was the first person known to have wired lit candles on the tree. That seems excessively dangerous. Anyways, the tree was spotted earlier than the 1830s, but it started to gain a little ground around then. Everybody still kind of viewed it as a pagan practice. It's really hard to track down the roots of the actual tree and why people decided to do it in the first place. That being said, pagan Europeans were known for worshipping trees, and they would commonly put evergreens in their houses and barns to scare away the devil and for the use of birds around Christmas time. So, is it a pagan practice? I'd say not. It might have its roots in pagan practices, but if you're going to pick at it that much, I can think of plenty of stuff you shouldn't be doing just because pagans did it first. Like baptism, or speaking in tongues, or communion. Just saying. Next, I want to talk about the date. Where did December 25th come from? Was it really Jesus' birthday? No. FYI, nobody knows when Jesus was born because nobody knows for sure that he was born in the first place. There are no solid, reliable records of the dude. The Gospel of John was based on Mark and Luke, which had been written at least 20 years earlier. Matthew was written at least 20 years after Mark and Luke too. So you can assume that we have 4 independent accounts of Jesus' life, but that's not actually how it worked. There are some suspected source writings. It's believed that Mark and Luke, the 2 original Gospels written, used a writing called Q as a source. Anyways, we're getting off track here. The point is that there's basically no evidence Jesus was a real person. He very well might have been, but we have no reliable way of knowing. Back to what I was saying. So where did the date of December 25th come from? Well, around 200 CE, about 1800 years ago, there was this big debate about when Jesus was born. Interestingly enough, that's about 100 years after the book of John was written. So the early church was trying to figure out when Jesus was born because they were big Jesus fans, and they came up with a few dates. In some writings from that time period, the dates May 20th, April 18th or 19th, March 25th, January 2nd, November 17th, and November 20th were all suggested. Like I said, we have absolutely no way of knowing when the dude was born, if he was born at all, because we have zero evidence or writings about it from that time at all. So anybody who suggests a date to you is pulling it out of their ass. But the date of March 25th was assumed to be the date that Jesus' peasant, basically previously unheard of parents thanks to extensive 3rd century research, and totally not because it was exactly 9 months before one of the biggest holiday celebrations of that time in Rome, Saturnalia. Saturnalia was a Roman celebration of the god Saturn around December 23rd. I say around December 23rd because it was actually celebrated across the span of about a week. The Saturn statue at the main temple usually had wool on its feet, but the wool would be removed for Saturnalia as an act of liberation. They would perform a sacrifice too. I'm not sure what they were sacrificing exactly, but I think it was probably some kind of animal. Certainly not humans. Human sacrifice to gods in that area had mostly ended by that time. Anyways, outside of the date, there are some other similarities between Christmas and Saturnalia. For example, the custom of gift giving is common between both celebrations. Also, lighting Advent candles is similar to lighting torches and wax tapers, as the Romans did in celebration of the returning power of the sun's light after the solstice. And according to my source, which is in the description, they also share the practices of eating, drinking, singing, dancing, and gambling. But what holiday doesn't include all that stuff? I just want to take a second to mention the solstice, because I said it a minute ago, but I didn't actually know what it was until fairly recently. For some reason I had associated the word solstice with pagan celebrations, so I avoided the word like the plague when I was little. I guess it's because every time I heard a Jehovah's Witness try to explain why Christmas was bad, the word solstice would always pop up. And of course, the Saturnalia celebration is a festival which celebrates the winter solstice. Basically, the solstice takes place twice a year, around June 21st and December 21st. The day of the summer solstice is the day when the sun is out for the longest amount of time in the year, and the winter solstice is when the sun is out for the shortest amount of time in the year. So as I mentioned a minute ago, the Romans would light torches and wax tapers to celebrate the return of the sun's light after the December solstice. It sounds to me like an average, weird, pointless celebration, and the solstice is a scientific fact. It happens twice a year. I don't know why I felt like it was so evil. Strange how this stuff gets drilled into you so hard and you believe it without question. Anyways, moving on to Yule. Yule was a festival held by historical Germanic people. The term Yuletide, meaning Yule time, was Christianized and renamed Christmastide. Modern paganism, called neo-paganism, celebrates it a little bit differently than ancient pagans used to. In the US, it's a celebration that lasts 12 days, beginning on the date of the winter solstice. Some forms of Wicca celebrate it as the rebirth of the great horned hunter god, who is represented by the newborn solstice sun. Some people celebrate with their coven. Scary word. Sorry to spook everybody. I really have to cover Wicca at some point. Anyways, isn't that interesting? The term Yuletide is the name of a pagan celebration. Having not celebrated Christmas for the first 18 years of my life, I didn't know what it meant, but I sure as heard it all the time from those pagans pretending to be Christians. So that's the extent of pagan influence on Christmas. Let's see, more pagan stuff. Pagan. Okay, here's something. Santa Claus. Some people claim that Santa absorbed characteristics of the Germanic god Woden, who led the Wild Hunt. The Wild Hunt is a myth where people would claim to be passed by a group of ghostly hunters. They'd commonly be elves, dead people, or fairies, and the hunt was usually led by a figure associated with Woden. Being passed by them is a harbinger of some disaster like war or disease. Usually only a single person would witness it and report back to their friends. Some believed that their spirits would join the hunt while they slept. Okay, I'm not seeing the comparison. It seems like people will find any reason to relate Christmas to some pagan holiday, or the leaders of the religion are looking for any reason to make people differentiate themselves from the rest of society. I know that's why Jehovah's Witnesses do it, and that's a shame. I really like Christmas, but you know what I like the most about Christmas? Presents. There's nothing better than presents. It sounds like my adopted family is going to be putting Jesus back in Christmas this year, and that really disappoints me. My grandmother said, "We have to get away from all this commercial stuff. Only one present per person this year, and we're going to be singing Christmas songs for the Christmas party instead of playing Christmas games." That's the exact opposite of what I want. I want less Jesus, more commercial stuff. What fun is Christmas with all that Jesus in it? Get that out of there. Anyways, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Patreon. Thanks for watching, guys, and Merry Christmas.